The gavel slammed down, silencing the courtroom. "Mrs. Parker," Judge Harrison's voice cut into me, cold and final. "All signs point to you losing custody of your daughter." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The words burned through me, and all I saw was Richard leaning back with that smirk, the kind that made it clear he believed he had already won. Just a seat away, my own daughter Clara turned her face, refusing to look at me. My hands trembled around the folder in my lap. It wasn't just paper. It was my lifeline. Inside those pages lay the truth I had carried for years, a truth no one else yet believed. The courtroom blurred before my eyes as I sat frozen, clutching the folder tighter against me. Across the room, Richard leaned back with a smirk, savoring the moment as if victory already belonged to him. And just beside him, Clara twisted the bracelet I had saved months to buy her for her birthday, yet she wouldn't meet my eyes. That cut deeper than anything. Richard's attorney rose, his words slicing through me like knives. "Your Honor, my client believes Mrs. Parker has failed to provide stability. She is emotionally inconsistent, financially dependent, and worst of all, she manipulates her daughter with guilt." Each accusation hit like a stone against my chest. Greedy. That was the word Richard had poisoned everyone with. Friends, the court, even Clara. He had turned my sacrifices into weapons against me. Mary, my lawyer, leaned in close and whispered, "Hold on. We'll get our chance." I steadied my breath even as my hands shook around the folder. They thought I was cornered, but I wasn't, because hidden in these pages was the one secret strong enough to silence every lie and freeze this entire courtroom. I lowered my gaze, my lips trembling into the faintest smile. They believed the game was over, but I knew. It had only just begun. The judge's words from the last hearing kept replaying in my head like a cruel echo. "All signs point to you losing custody of your daughter." Those words followed me into my sleep, into my mornings, wrapping around me like chains I couldn't break. That next morning, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the faded tablecloth I'd owned for over a decade. The silence in the room pressed against me. The chair across from me, the chair Richard used to sit in, mocked me with its emptiness. I remembered the sound of his voice there, once warm, once telling Clara bedtime stories, while I watched with a full heart. I used to believe love and sacrifice would be enough to hold us together, but that was before success changed him. Now, when Richard finally landed the lucrative job he had chased for years, I was the one who celebrated hardest. I ironed his shirts, kissed his cheek, whispered, "I knew you could do it." I thought his victory was ours. I was wrong. The man who came home with shiny cufflinks and a sharper smile wasn't the husband I had once trusted. Slowly, his words became blades. "You should be grateful I kept this family afloat. Without me, where would you even be?" In front of his colleagues, he'd laugh at my sacrifices. "She used to dream of going back to school," he'd say, raising his glass. "But let's be honest. This family would fall apart if she ever tried something ambitious." They laughed politely. I smiled tightly. Inside, I felt myself shrinking. Every remark chipped away at the woman I had been until I barely recognized myself. But the private insults weren't the worst part. The true cruelty came when he turned Clara into his audience. I'll never forget the night I stood frozen outside her bedroom door, listening. "Sweetheart," Richard's voice was low, persuasive. "Your mother doesn't really understand what's best for you. She just wants to hold on to you because she has nothing else." Clara's voice trembled. "That's not true, Dad." "Think about it," he pressed. "She hasn't built a career. She hasn't moved forward. She clings to the past. You deserve better than her bitterness." My hands shook on the doorframe. I wanted to burst in, to scream, "That's a lie." But I didn't. Because if I did, he'd only twist it into proof that I was overbearing. So I walked away in silence, tears burning my eyes. That night, something inside me cracked. Richard didn't stop with whispers. He humiliated me publicly, too. At a friend's party, with champagne glasses clinking, he raised his voice. If it weren't for me, Evelyn would still be scrubbing tables at some diner. Isn't that right, darling? The guests chuckled awkwardly. My face burned, but I forced a smile. Later, Clara asked me, almost in a whisper, "Mom, why didn't you say anything?" I lied to protect her, because sometimes silence keeps the peace. But the truth was, silence was eating me alive. The betrayals mounted. Receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, jewelry I'd never received, a faint perfume clinging to his suits. One day, I found a hotel keycard in his wallet. He brushed it off with a laugh. "Business trip, honey." Don't get paranoid, but deep down, I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. Not until the weight of his lies collapsed the marriage entirely. After the divorce, he wielded his new life like a weapon. Tailored suits, a gleaming car, the confidence of a man who knew appearances mattered more than truth. And me? I came to court in secondhand blouses, with tired eyes and no armor but my truth. To the outside world, he looked like the picture of stability. I looked like the weary ex-wife, clinging to custody as though it were the only piece of identity I had left. He fed that perception at every turn. One afternoon, Clara came home from his house, her eyes clouded. She hesitated before asking, "Mom, is it true? Are you only fighting for me because of child support money?" The question pierced my chest. I knelt in front of her, tears stinging. "No, Clara. I'm fighting for you because you are my world, because I love you." But I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes. His poison had seeped into her. That was the moment I realized I couldn't win this battle with words alone. I needed proof, undeniable, irrefutable proof. So I started collecting, quietly, credit card statements showing his secret spending, hotel bills that contradicted his stories, notes Clara had once written about arguments she overheard. Each piece felt like a small candle in the dark. I didn't know if they would be enough, but I clung to them because they were all I had. And still, he found ways to crush me. One day, outside the courthouse, he leaned so close I could smell the cologne that wasn't mine. His words dripped with venom. "You'll never win, Evelyn. Judges don't give kids to women like you. You're weak. You're pathetic. And when Clara chooses me, you'll finally see how irrelevant you've become." He walked away, leaving me trembling on the steps. For years, I had endured in silence, believing love, patience, and sacrifice would be enough. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. He was right about one thing. The woman he used to control was gone. What he didn't know, what he would never see coming, was that I had stopped being afraid. I tucked the folder under my arm as I left the courthouse. Inside was more than Richard could imagine, evidence sharp enough to slice through every lie. For the first time, I allowed myself a fragile smile. The storm was building, and I was ready to meet it head on. I tucked the folder under my arm as I left the courthouse. Inside was more than Richard could imagine, proof sharp enough to slice through his lies. And for the first time, I allowed myself a fragile smile. The storm was building, and I was ready to meet it head on. That night, I couldn't sleep. The judge's words still rang in my ears. "All signs point to you losing custody." They pressed on my chest with every breath, heavier in the silence of my empty house. I wandered into Clara's room, straightening things out the way I used to when she was little. The lavender scent I'd chosen for her lingered faintly, bitter-sweet. She wasn't home. She was spending the weekend with Richard, but for a moment I could almost see her curled up on her bed, safe, untouched by the war tearing us apart. That's when I noticed it. Her old phone, cracked, half buried beneath a pile of books. Curiosity tugged at me. I pressed the button, and to my surprise, The screen flickered to life. I scrolled absent-mindedly until I found it. A forgotten voice memo. The date was a few months ago. I hesitated, thumb hovering. Then I pressed play. Richard's voice erupted from the tiny speaker, sharp, venomous. "You think she's weak now? Just wait until I take Clara. I'll crush Evelyn in court. Custody isn't about Clara. It's about breaking her. She needs to know she's nothing without me." The words struck like a blade. My knees gave way and I sank to the floor, clutching the phone as tears blurred my vision. Proof. Raw, undeniable proof. This battle wasn't about Clara's well-being. It was about his revenge. I listened again and again. Each replay cut deeper, but with every cut came something else. Resolve. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. His mask had finally slipped. Now I held the weapon that could pierce it, but one piece wasn't enough. Not for court. I needed more. The following week, I searched through boxes Richard had left behind during the divorce, dusty folders in the garage labeled taxes, receipts, work expenses. At first it was boring, utility bills, credit cards. But then, tucked between stacks, I found them. Documents showing transfers to offshore accounts, withdrawals that made no sense, lavish spending he had hidden. My pulse raced. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore, it was fraud. If revealed, it wouldn't just destroy his image as a father, it could ruin him professionally. I pressed my hand against the cold concrete wall, steadying myself. I didn't want revenge for the sake of revenge. I wanted the truth to be heard. I wanted Clara to see who her father really was. That night, I called Mary, my lawyer. My voice shook as I told her everything. When the recording finished playing, there was silence on the line. Then Mary's voice came through, steady as stone. "This changes everything. But we have to be strategic. If we reveal it too soon, Richard will twist it. Timing is everything. Do you think it's enough?" I whispered. "It's more than enough," she said firmly. "But let him boast first. Let him paint himself as perfect, and when he's most confident, we strike. He'll never see it coming." For the first time in weeks, a shaky laugh escaped me. "I don't want to destroy him, Mary. I just want Clara back. I just want her to know the truth." Mary's tone softened. "And she will. When the truth speaks, it doesn't whisper, it roars." The days crawled toward the next hearing. I carried that folder everywhere, through grocery aisles, into church pews, even while folding laundry. I imagined Richard's hands tearing it away, shredding my proof, but he stayed smug, oblivious, certain of his victory. Clara noticed my unease. One night, as I stirred a pot of soup, she asked quietly, "Mom, why do you always look so scared lately?" The spoon paused mid-air. My chest ached with the urge to tell her everything, but Mary's warning echoed, "Not yet." So I forced a smile, "Because I love you, honey. And when you love someone this much, you're always afraid of losing them." Her frown deepened, but she said nothing, setting the table in silence. Her doubt was a wound I couldn't close. Not yet. The turning point came on a rainy Sunday. Tension snapped like a brittle string during an argument. "Dad says you're just bitter," Clara shouted, her eyes blazing. "That you're using me as an excuse because you can't let go of him." The words sliced me open, but instead of shouting back, I walked into my room, retrieved the phone, and pressed it into her hands. My voice trembled. "Sweetheart, I want you to hear something, just once. Then you tell me what you believe." She rolled her eyes but pressed play. Richard's laughter filled the room, cold, cruel, unmistakable. I watched Clara's face change. Confusion first, then shock, then disbelief that made her hands shake. She stopped halfway through, tears brimming. "Mom, he said that?" Her voice cracked. I nodded. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing into my shoulder. For the first time in months, I felt her weight lean fully against me again. Later that night, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know I kissed the top of her head. It's not your fault. Your father is very good at telling stories. But now, we'll tell ours." From that moment, Clara became my quiet ally. She didn't confront him, but her eyes no longer carried the same doubt. Trust was returning, piece by fragile piece. As the court date drew near, Mary and I sat in her office, papers spread across her desk like dominoes waiting to fall. The receipts, the transfers, the recording, each one a weapon of truth. Mary leaned back, eyes gleaming. "We'll let him boast first. He'll act like the saint, the victim, and then," she snapped her fingers, "we freeze him in his own lies." I clenched my fists, not from fear, but from resolve. I could almost see it already. Richard's smirk faltering, his voice catching, the courtroom stunned into silence as the truth played out. For years, I had endured in shadows. Now, my silence was over. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best blouse, simple but elegant. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in years, I didn't see the weary woman Richard mocked. I saw a mother armed with truth. I picked up the folder, pressed it against my heart, and whispered to my reflection, "Today, the silence ends." The camera would linger on my reflection in the mirror, no longer the victim, but the woman about to change everything. The courthouse buzzed with whispers that morning, the air thick with judgment. I walked through the heavy wooden doors slowly, my blouse pressed crisp, my hair pulled back neat. No jewels, no heels, just the quiet dignity of a woman who had nothing left to hide and everything left to protect. In my hands, I carried the folder that had never left my side. Richard was already there, sprawled in his chair like it was a throne. His navy suit gleamed under the fluorescent lights, his tie a bold shade of red that screamed power. He caught my eye and smirked, leaning toward his attorney as though to share a private joke. But this time, I didn't look away. I held his gaze, steady, unflinching. For a flicker of a second, his smirk faltered. The session began with his attorney striding to the center, his shoes clicking sharply against the polished floor. His voice was loud, confident, almost theatrical. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. My client provides stability, financial security, emotional consistency. Mrs. Parker, on the other hand, has shown dependency, instability, and, most concerning, a manipulative influence over her daughter." He pointed toward me as if he were unveiling a criminal. "She has no career, no assets, no foundation to build a future. My client wishes only to protect his daughter from a life of uncertainty." Richard straightened in his seat, basking in the performance. Then he leaned forward, his voice dripping with venom that sliced through the air. "Evelyn has always been weak. She doesn't love Clara. She needs her. That's the difference." Gasps rippled across the gallery. A woman in the back covered her mouth, and I caught the judge's brow furrow slightly. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I sat still, my knuckles white around the folder. Beside me, Mary whispered, calm and certain, "Not yet." When it was our turn, Mary rose with quiet authority, smoothing the papers in her hands. "Your Honor," she said evenly, her tone controlled but razor sharp, "let's replace words with truth." Judge Harrison gave a curt nod. The courtroom fell silent as though the entire room had inhaled and refused to exhale. Mary laid out the documents one by one. Financial records, hidden accounts, suspicious transfers. Each page slapped against the table like a drumbeat. With every thud, I watched Richard's confidence shrink, his smile twitching at the edges. His jaw clenched, his eyes darted between the evidence and the judge. Finally, Mary placed the old phone on the table. Her voice dropped low, resonant with finality. And then there is this recording. A voice memo from Mr. Parker himself. Richard shot to his feet, his chair screeching across the floor. "Objection!" "That's private. It's inadmissible." Judge Harrison raised a hand, his tone icy. "Sit down, Mr. Parker. We'll hear it." The gallery hushed instantly. Even the air felt heavier, as though waiting for the blow. My pulse thundered in my ears as Mary pressed play. Richard's voice erupted from the speakers, venomous and unmistakable. "You think she's weak now? Just wait until I take Clara. I'll crush Evelyn in court. Custody isn't about Clara. It's about breaking her. She needs to know she's nothing without me." The words lingered like smoke, suffocating. Every head swiveled toward Richard, his face drained of color, his lips moving but no words coming. He looked like a man choking on his own poison. Clara sat a few feet away, frozen. Her hands shook in her lap, tears welling until they spilled down her cheeks. And me? I felt it, the tide turning. The lies that had drowned me for years were finally receding. For the first time, the truth stood taller than him. Judge Harrison's voice sliced the silence. "Mr. Parker, is that your voice?" Richard stammered. It was out of context. I was angry. I didn't mean..." But no one believed him. His arrogance, his power, his control, all of it crumbled in an instant. Murmurs rippled through the gallery like waves crashing against stone. Mary's voice cut clean through. What kind of father calls his daughter a weapon? What kind of man seeks custody not for love, but for cruelty? This is not the portrait of a protector, Your Honor. This is the portrait of a manipulator. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, people shaking their heads. Judge Harrison's gavel slammed down hard. "Order!" I rose slowly, my legs trembling but my voice carrying across the chamber. For years I stayed silent. For years I believed sacrifice would be enough, but silence only fed his cruelty. Today, I am not silent. I turned to Clara, locking eyes with her, my words breaking but strong. "Clara, I never fought for you because of money. I fought because you are my heart. That will never change," Clara broke. She covered her mouth, sobbing, then rushed to my side. She clutched my hand with everything she had. Her tears soaked my blouse, but I didn't feel weakness. I felt her trust return. Richard lunged at one final desperate attempt. "She's manipulating Clara right here. Can't you see? This is her performance." Judge Harrison's gavel cracked again, the sound like lightning splitting wood. "Enough! What I have heard today is damning. This court will not reward deceit nor cruelty. Sit down." Richard collapsed into his chair, his face ashen, his hands shook as though the weight of his own lies pressed down on him. The courtroom froze, not in disbelief, but in clarity. The truth had spoken, louder than any performance he could muster. The climax broke like a storm. The gallery buzzed with murmurs, the air alive with tension. Clara clung to me, sobbing openly. Mary gathered the papers with quiet triumph, sliding them into her briefcase with precision. Richard sat slumped, his eyes locked on the floor, his proud mask shattered. And me? I didn't feel triumph. I felt release, years of humiliation, of being silenced, of being called greedy, weak, nothing, obliterated in a single moment. I didn't gloat. I didn't sneer. I just breathed, long, deep, free, as though I was taking my first true breath in years. Judge Harrison leaned forward, his voice solemn. "This court has heard enough. The matter of custody will now be decided." The gavel hovered mid-air. The entire room held its breath. I squeezed Clara's hand, bracing myself, not for loss this time, but for justice. The gavel lingered, the sound of its coming strike like thunder waiting to break. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed like thunder, final and undeniable. "This court grants sole custody of Clara Parker to her mother, Mrs. Evelyn Parker," Judge Harrison declared, his voice steady and resolute. Mr. Richard Parker's petition is denied on grounds of malicious intent and evidence of misconduct. This court will not entrust a child to a parent who treats custody as a weapon." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words reverberated through me, vibrating in my chest, sinking into my bones. My daughter's hand trembled in mine, gripping tighter as though she too needed to make sure this was real. Around us, the room collectively exhaled, the tension shattering like glass. Richard shot up from his chair, his voice raw, desperate. "This is ridiculous." She twisted everything. Judge Harrison's gavel cracked again, cutting through his protest. "Sit down, Mr. Parker. Your behavior today speaks for itself. This court is adjourned." The bailiff moved forward. Richard's attorney tugged his sleeve, urging him down, but he shook him off. I stared, and for the first time I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before: fear. His mask of arrogance had cracked. The man who once strutted with untouchable confidence now looked exposed, small, stripped bare by truth. Clara turned to me, her cheeks wet, her eyes raw. Then she collapsed into my arms. "I'm sorry, Mom," she sobbed. "I should have believed you sooner. I just didn't know. I didn't know he was—" I pressed my hand to her hair, whispering softly, steadying her like I had since she was a baby. "Shh. It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault. What matters is that we're here now." Together, her tears soaked my blouse, but I didn't care. That embrace, tight, desperate, unbroken, was the true victory. The bridge between us, eroded for so long, was finally rebuilt. I watched Richard stumble out of the courtroom, shoulders hunched, his stride no longer commanding but broken. No one followed him. No colleague clapped his back. No friend offered him comfort. He walked out alone, a fallen king retreating into shadows. Beside me, Mary gathered her papers with practiced calm. She looked at me with a faint smile. "You did it." I shook my head, my voice thick with gratitude. "No, we did it. And thank you for believing in me when I nearly stopped believing in myself." She squeezed my hand firmly. "The truth has a way of surfacing, Evelyn, but it takes courage to carry it this far. That courage was yours." When Clara and I finally stepped out of the courthouse, the autumn sun bathed the marble steps in golden light. The storm inside felt like a lifetime ago. People bustled past, some whispering, some simply watching, but I paid them no mind. I lifted my face toward the sun and drew in a deep breath. For the first time in years, the air felt light. Clara slipped her hand into mine. For so long, I had been the one guiding her through busy streets, through childhood fears. But as we walked side by side down those courthouse steps, it didn't feel like mother and child anymore. It felt like two women bonded by truth, walking forward together. That evening, our small home felt transformed, warmer, brighter. I roasted chicken with Rosemary, her favorite, and we sat at the same kitchen table that had once felt like a place of despair, the same table where bills piled up, where I had cried silently. Tonight, laughter floated in the air like it hadn't in years. Clara poked at her food thoughtfully, then looked at me with searching eyes. "Mom, do you ever regret it? Staying all those years, sacrificing everything?" Her question hung heavy. I paused, my fork hovering. Images rushed back, dreams abandoned, nights I wept into pillows, insults endured in silence. But then I looked at her, alive, safe, full of light. "No," I said finally, my voice steady, "because those sacrifices gave me you, and I'd make them all over again. But now I've learned. Sacrifice doesn't mean silence. It doesn't mean letting someone destroy your worth." Clara nodded, her eyes shining with understanding beyond her years. "I think I get it now," she whispered. Later that night, after Clara had gone to bed, I sat alone by the window. The stars glimmered faintly above the dark street. I thought of Richard, not with hatred, just with distance. He had nearly broken me, but in the end, his cruelty revealed my strength. I whispered into the quiet night, almost a prayer. Respect isn't given by blood. It's earned through love and kindness. The words lingered, hanging in the stillness like a vow. And to you, listening now, maybe parts of my story feel familiar. Maybe you too have endured silence, sacrifice, betrayal. Maybe you've carried truths no one else could see. If you were in my place, standing in that courtroom with the truth in your hands, what would you have done? Would you have spoken or stayed silent? Have you ever witnessed injustice in your family, moments where lies seemed louder than love? If so, you are not alone. Here at Twist Stories, every tale is a reminder. No one has to suffer in silence. Truth, though buried, always rises. Dignity, though tested, can be reclaimed. So tell us, what part of my story touched you most? Have you ever lived a moment when truth finally spoke louder than lies? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice may help someone else find theirs. And before we end, don't forget to subscribe to Twist Stories and turn on notifications. Here, you'll always find stories of sacrifice, betrayal, and the twists that turn pain into justice. And tell us, where are you watching from? Maybe your own journey will inspire the next story we tell. That night, as Clara and I sat at our kitchen table, laughing, talking, simply being, I realized something. The scars of the past would never fully vanish, but they no longer defined us. Justice had spoken, love had endured, and a new chapter had begun.